It was supposed to be a normal Sunday morning in Moscow, Idaho, but instead, a nightmare was discovered inside a quiet off-campus house. For bright young lives gone, a small town shaken to its core, and a nation left asking, who could do something like this? The answer, authorities say, was hiding in plain sight. A man who studied crime, obsessed over criminal behavior, and believed he understood the mind of a killer. His name, Bryan Kohberger. November 13th, 2022. It was just after 4 a.m. when someone slipped into the three-story rental home on King Road. Inside were 6 college students, most fast asleep. By the time the sun rose, 4 of them would never wake again. Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, Chapin, each stabbed repeatedly, each killed with brutal precision. The killer vanished into the night, leaving behind only horror and questions that no one could answer. The University of Idaho was paralyzed. Students fled campus. Parents demanded answers. Police reassured the public, but had no suspect, no weapon, and seemingly no leads. For weeks, fear ruled the streets of Moscow. Was a serial killer lurking among them? Would he strike again? And yet, somewhere in the crowd of worried faces, the alleged killer may have been watching it all unfold. Across the state line in Pullman, Washington, lived 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger, a criminology PhD student, a teaching assistant, a man who studied criminal minds and prided himself on understanding them. Classmates described him as intense. Some said he liked to dominate conversations. Others recalled he had an unsettling presence, as if he was always analyzing, always watching. On paper, he looked like an ambitious academic, but underneath, authorities allege he was something far darker. At first, investigators struggled. There were no signs of forced entry. No witnesses saw the killer, and for weeks, it felt like a dead end. But then, a single clue changed everything. Left on a bed, next to one of the victims was a knife sheath. And on that sheath, hidden to the naked eye, DNA. It didn't match anyone in the immediate database. But genealogical testing, the same method used to catch the Golden State Killer, gave investigators a name, Bryan Kohberger. Detectives soon learned that Kohberger owned a white Hyundai Elantra, the same car seen on surveillance near the victim's home that night. Cell phone records placed him near the house not just once, but multiple times in the weeks leading up to the murders. It was as if he had been studying the house, watching, waiting. In late December 2022, as the nation celebrated the holidays, FBI agents and local police tracked Kohberger across the country. He had driven back to his parents' home in Pennsylvania. But he wasn't free for long. December 30th. In the quiet darkness of the Pocono Mountains, tactical teams surrounded the Kohberger family home. Bryan was arrested without incident. The charges: 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of burglary. The nation gasped. How could a man devoted to the study of crime become the accused in one of the most shocking crimes of the decade? Some saw twisted irony. Others saw a terrifying arrogance. Had Kohberger believed he could outsmart the very system he studied? Extradited back to Idaho, Kohberger appeared in court. He looked calm. He answered questions with measured precision, and he pled not guilty. Prosecutors, however, declared they would seek the death penalty. The evidence they promised was overwhelming. Still, his defense pushed back, challenging DNA methods, filing motions to move the trial, demanding time to review the massive case file. The trial was delayed and delayed again. The families of the victims waited for justice. The nation waited for answers. And Kohberger? He sat in silence, watching, listening, as if analyzing the case against him like another class assignment. Online, the case became a storm. Speculation, theories, debates about guilt and innocence. Some painted Kohberger as a cold-blooded predator. Others questioned whether the evidence was truly enough. But one fact remained: 4 young lives were gone, 4 families shattered, and only one man sat accused. Why did he allegedly do it? Why this house? Why those victims? Was it personal? Or was it an experiment? A twisted attempt to live out the crimes he studied so intensely? Authorities have not revealed the full motive, and perhaps they never truly will. But the case continues. The trial looms, and Bryan Kohberger's fate remains undecided. In the end, we are left with haunting questions. Was Bryan Kohberger simply a student of crime? Or was he always destined to become part of the stories he once studied? The answers may come in court. But one thing is certain, this case is far from over. But behind the headlines lies an even darker story. A story of obsession, isolation, and a man who may have crossed the line between studying crime and living it. Bryan Christopher Kohberger was born in 1994 in Pennsylvania. From an early age, he seemed different. Classmates remembered him as quiet, often withdrawn. In high school, he battled weight issues, sometimes bullied, yet fiercely determined to change his image. Later, he lost over 100 pounds, transforming his body through sheer discipline. But with that transformation came something else, an intensity, a coldness. Those who knew him said he grew distant, as if he saw the world not through empathy, but through observation. Kohberger's fascination with crime ran deep. He studied psychology, then criminal justice, and eventually criminology, devoting years to the subject. At Washington State University, he taught undergraduates while pursuing his PhD. He read case files. He studied killers. He asked probing questions about how criminals think, how they plan, how they act. But one detail haunts investigators. Just months before the Idaho murders, Kohberger posted a research survey online. In it, he asked former criminals about their emotions during crimes, how they felt, what they thought, how they planned. Was this an academic exercise? Or was it something more sinister, a roadmap to his own future? Classmates described Bryan as both brilliant and unnerving. He challenged professors, corrected peers, spoke as if he knew more than everyone else. Some said he gave off a strange energy. Others said he graded harshly, even unfairly, when working as a teaching assistant. In his final months of freedom, Kohberger appeared more agitated, his intensity growing sharper, as though he was under pressure or preparing for something. Once arrested, investigators revealed the mountain of evidence. The knife-sheath DNA, the surveillance footage of his white Hyundai Elantra circling the crime scene, cell phone records showing his presence near the house, over a dozen times before the murders. Most chillingly, data showed his phone was turned off during the window of the killings, and then mysteriously turned back on after, as if he thought he could cover his tracks. But the trail was already there. In court, Kohberger appeared calm, almost expressionless. His eyes scanned the room. He listened intently. He rarely spoke. His attorneys argued that the DNA may have been mishandled, that the case was built on circumstantial connections. But prosecutors stood firm. They announced they would seek the death penalty. The crime, they said, was not just brutal. It was calculated, cold, and merciless. Families of the victims sat just feet away, their grief filling the courtroom. Every glance at Kohberger seemed to ask the same silent question. Why? Experts began to weigh in. Was Kohberger driven by rejection? By a need to prove superiority? By fantasies fueled from years of studying other killers? Some criminologists suggested he may have sought the perfect crime, one he believed would never be solved. Ironically, his own discipline betrayed him. The very science of criminology was what tracked him down. It is the cruelest form of dramatic irony. A man who studied justice is now at its mercy. Through every hearing, the families of Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan endured. They held vigils. They spoke out. They carried photographs of their children, refusing to let the world forget who this case was truly about. Their courage reminded everyone that this story is not only about an accused killer. It is about 4 lives stolen for futures lost and the ripple of heartbreak left behind. As the trial inched forward, one truth became clear. If the jury accepts the evidence, Bryan Kohberger will face the most severe punishment the law allows. For some, that means closure. For others, no sentence can ever equal the loss of 4 young lives. But justice, in its own way, is closing in. The story of Bryan Kohberger is not only about crime and punishment. It is about choices. The choices that lead one man down a path of darkness. And the choices we all make every day that define who we are. Kohberger studied crime to understand it. But in the end, he allegedly became what he once analyzed. And for that, he must now face accountability. Knowledge without empathy can be dangerous. Brilliance without compassion can become a weapon. And no matter how clever someone believes they are, justice has a way of catching up. A community scarred, but stronger. Families devastated, but unbroken. And an accused killer, once convinced he could outsmart the world, now trapped in the very system he thought he understood. As the trial concludes and justice takes its course, we are reminded of a simple truth. Evil may walk among us, but it never escapes forever. For Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan, the world will not forget, and justice will be served. This story is based on publicly available information and ongoing legal proceedings. Bryan Kohberger is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.